Good evening and thank you for joining us for Sunday's news. The PNG Trade Union Congress says there is a need for the national government to review the income taxation rates that will be imposed in 2019. The call for review in taxation rates come days after media reports published revealed the change in the taxation threshold and the percent charged in the different income levels.
Since EMTV broadcast a story on the 2019 income tax rates, there had been much commentary on social media regarding the rates of personal income tax are in force as of January 1st. A graph incorrectly stated that the employees earning up to 12,500 kina would be taxed at 22%. This graph, based on 2019 national budget documents and available on the Department of Treasury's website. Treasurer Charles Abel then clarified the rates of income tax, highlighting that the figures may have been an error in printing. The Treasurer pointed to the fact that the government had given employees at the lowest income level some reprieve.
I want to clarify, nothing has changed in the tax tables. Nothing has changed in terms of the tax that government imposes, except increasing the tax-free from 10,000 to 12,500 kina per year. So up to 500 kina a fortnight, you don't pay any tax.
But this has not gone down well with the trade unions, with the Papua New Guinea Trade Union Congress saying despite the increase in the tax threshold for the first and second tier levels, the majority of Papua New Guineans in the formal workforce will heavily be penalized.
Going forward, 2019, the issue of tax will be in the center stage of trade union movement, trade union congress. We intend to call all the affiliates together in the early part of this year, in the first quarter of this year, to raise our concerns. We believe most of our affiliates, all the unions in the public sector, in the private sector, share same concern. And they have been advocating those issues in their own individual way. But we at the Congress want to take that issue as a serious concern because we believe we've been heavily penalized.
Through the 2019 national budget, employees earning 12,500 kina and less annually will not be taxed. This follows an increase of the tax-free threshold from the previous level of 10,000 kina. Employees earning 12,501 kina to 20,000 kina will pay 22% tax. This second-tier tax bracket, an increase from 2018 level of 18,000 kina. Employees earning 20,001 kina to 33,000 kina annually will be taxed at 33%. Those earning between 33,001 kina up to 70,000 kina annually will pay 35% tax. Employees who earn between 70,001 kina to 200,000 kina will be taxed 40%, and those whose annual income exceeds 250,000 kina annually will be taxed 42%.
So what we've done is reduced the tax that you're paying at 30%, which is the third level, and increasing what you're paying at 22%. So these two measures are decreasing income tax for wage earners at the lower level. But the other thing to understand is those same rates of tax apply to all wage earners. If you're getting 40,000 or 70,000, it doesn't mean that you are paying tax at one flat rate. Everybody is taxed.
While this has created debates on social media platforms, Treasurer Charles Abel clarified the rates and also justified the government's decision to increase the tax-free threshold as a way of putting back money into the pockets of the lowest paid employees in the formal sector.
And that is to gradually bring some tax relief, some relief from tax burden on our people, especially the people at the lower end of the scale.
However, the unions are of the view that the income tax rates in Papua New Guinea are still too high, drawing on comparisons of PNG's second-tier income tax rates with that of Fiji, Australia and New Zealand.
We understand there are tax relief by government as announced by Treasury Department and Treasurer in our recent budget handout. But having done a thorough research in the type of taxes we pay, we've identified there are publication of information, sharing of information that there's going to be relief for workers on minimum or small or low bracket earnings. But we found out that on the other side of it, the point of sale will become a very serious issue.
Whilst Papua New Guineans earning up to 20,000 kina pay a marginal tax of 22%, the second-tier tax income tax rates in neighboring countries are as follows. 18% of those earning between $30,000 and $50,000 in Fiji, 19% of employees earning between $18,001 and $37,000 in Australia, and 17.5% for employees earning between $14,000 and $48,000 in New Zealand. Thekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
You're with Sunday's News. We'll be back with more after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back to the news. Central and West New Britain provinces are also experiencing heavy rains and flooding. The National Weather Service says torrential rains will continue in the southern region and parts of West New Britain and Manus provinces. These are effects of Cyclone Penny experienced in Australia's Queensland coast. The National Disaster Office has issued warnings to people living in flood-prone areas to move to higher grounds, and for people to stay away from trees, billboards or old buildings in case they collapse because of strong winds.
You know, the effects of the cyclone have been felt in Port Moresby and is now moving down towards Milne Bay, so people have been put on notice down there, and they're all battening down the hatches and laying low for a couple of days. Hopefully there's not too much damage or impact on our people's lives, but it's something that we face regularly in places like Milne Bay and I'm sure the other coastal areas. So I hope people are safe in the next few days in Milne Bay.
Continuous rain and strong winds in the southern region have so far claimed 7 lives in the central province. The central provincial government says food gardens and villages have been submerged in some areas as the province faces more rain in the coming days. Fidelis Sukina with the details.
The rain has brought more than just blessings for the people of Central Province. For some, the rains have brought disaster, with the continuous downpour submerging homes and food gardens. The footage here is from the Laloki Ward 14 in the Hiri local level government.
All right, okay, thank you.
Acting Provincial Administrator Peter Simbakua was on site with the team assessing the situation and gave an overall update on the situation in the Central Province.
Province has been declared one of the disaster provinces in the country due to this strong wind, rain and flash flood across the province. We've started the work on emergency on the 23rd of December last year, and it's now 18 days operation.
So far, 7 people have been confirmed dead, 5 of these from Goilala district, where the provincial government tried to medevac some of the victims out of the area. but bad weather conditions have halted efforts, with the helicopter forced to return to Port Moresby after 4 failed attempts.
We made 4 attempts into Waitape to assist in medivaking one of the critically injured due to what they call the pollen tree. But the attempts were unsuccessful because of the bad weather up there, especially strong wind.
With the destruction of food crops and flooding of villages, the provincial disaster team has already commenced work on coordinating relief supplies to reach affected areas.
We have a team working 24/7 led by the advisor, disaster emergency and climate change. The team, police officers also supporting us, and administration behind us in looking into the disaster.
In the meantime, the provincial government is calling on the public to report those in disaster areas who need immediate attention for rescue or relief supply.
Our encouragement or warning to our people to take precaution and not to post themselves when they see that they need to be on the safer ground, and not to take risk.
The numbers to call are Acting Provincial Administrator Peter Simbakua on phone number 754-6682 or Butler Hibo on phone number 725-79354 and to my Ipo on 7559-685 or 794-19839. Fideli Sukina, National EMTV News.
A community in Laloki Central Province is recovering from 2 nights of flooding as water levels rose, fell and then rose again, submerging food gardens as the community experienced the worst flooding in the area by the Laloki River.
Children splash around and some even trying to catch fish. A smile on this man's face as he walks through the water. These young men building banana rafts, enjoying the outcome of continuous rain. But it was not all smiles in the community this afternoon when EMTV went to Laloki Ward 14 in the Hiri local level government. Cars can now drive through because water levels have subsided. Over the past 2 nights, cars had lined up, forced to wait out the flooding caused by the Laloki River. Houses were also submerged, but some relief in the recent hours for the settlers as rain slowed down. The Ward Councillor George Pote Girisa confirming that this is the first time such flooding has occurred.
One of the first of its kind, the floods come within the second month. Every January, February of every beginning of the month, people are experiencing flooding inside the area of Laloki. But the current one, more big plan or past time one.
The settlers, the majority of them subsistence farmers, met the new year with disaster, and with the 2019 school year a few weeks away, residents will have to find some other way to make money for the school year.
Percent of this population are subsistence farmers. They live arere lo warana, planning kai way by fast selling crop or some kumun about tomato na lista. So this time currently now me plus tablo one bed state straight. We welcomed in 2019. Nature been making kind of some. First time the community were experiencing very hardship here.
The Central Province Highway Patrol are working to hold together law and order during the disaster and have been assessing the situation and directing traffic into the flooded areas.
The police, law, highway patrol central, and helping more disaster line. As general public, na work lo travel, wara lo Laloki, one blah blah. Away blow me blow Iritana way we connecting central one them Gulf is affected.
Even during disaster, people find ways to steal. Police have already encountered opportunists stealing from passengers when vehicles lined up waiting for flood waters to recede.
Morning is Laloki Warai been pull up no go command up. Only passenger work around the road, hard all come through the Narapla side. Na only opportunities is trying through the Rosimos something kako kai blow lokar na Rosim Nafimol na lagi that me pla respond area upload isla na me pla clear mall na o public around good road.
Fideli Sukina, National EMTV News.
A weekend of continuous rain has caused a second landslip in Port Moresby. The landslip at Idubada on Saturday occurred adjacent to a fuel pipeline, posing a serious threat to motorists and communities along that area. A similar landslip occurred last week along the back road from 9 Mile to Girahu.
Motorists used only one side of the road as authorities began the task of removing rubble from the landslip. Just a few meters away from where the landslip occurred, visible cracks on the side of the hill, posing a threat for another landslip. This is another incident following continuous rain in Port Moresby and much of the southern region. Many people in this part of the country are bracing for more damages if rains and strong winds continue, with weather experts warning of continued bad weather in the coming days. Wednesday last week, a transmission tower collapsed, narrowly missing 2 houses at Korobosea following strong winds. On Thursday, the Laloki River burst its banks and spilled onto the National Agriculture Research Institute, destroying crops planted for scientific research. On Friday, a 16-year-old boy was reported dead after he was swept away by heavy current at Morata. His body was recovered when the water levels subsided. By tomorrow, it will be 1 week since the National Weather Service first issued warnings for heavy rains and strong winds in the southern region. Thekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
For florists, rain is seen as a blessing. However, for one SME in Port Moresby's Morata suburb, continuous rain since the start of the new year have turned into a disaster. Vivid Flower Arrangement, a florist business owned by 14 widows, may have to start all over again when the rains finally stop after their gardens were destroyed. EMTV News cadet journalist Podi Vai visited the owners.
Located near the Morata swamp is Vivid Flower Arrangements, a registered florist business. It is from the gardens that they pick flowers to style and sell as office decorations to clients.
PM office, Prime Minister office, Manasupe, City Hall, Central, Fincop, Gas, Lowtown, Pacific Place, 7 Mile, NSC.
Initially, the rains were a blessing until it continued.
Condition blo mi play no good plus. Still wara moklo bagarapi mi play stop na. Where mi plus survive lo flower blo mi play. Moklo wara oklo down him na mi play oklo stranded stop.
But whilst production from the garden in Port Moresby may not resume in the near future, the resilient widows have a plan B in place. They will now depend on flowers flown in from Eastern Highlands province to style for their clients. Since it is the only way to earn income, they will be patiently waiting for the rain to stop. Podivai, National EMTV News.
You're at Sunday's News. When we come back, we take a look at stories making headlines overseas. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. Turning overseas, a man has died after being electrocuted by a fallen power line in Western Sydney overnight, following a severe thunderstorm that lashed through parts of the city.
The 38-year-old man was in his punch bowl home here in Sydney's West last night at around 10:30 when he heard a loud bang. He, like many other residents in the street, came out to see what the noise was. Neighbours said he stood directly on a live wire and collapsed instantly. They were unable to help him until emergency services arrived a short time later. The power was then turned off and the man was declared dead at the scene. The 38-year-old's wife and 3 children were obviously distressed. They were treated for shock by paramedics.
I walked down to tell everyone to back away, and that's when the gentleman's walked straight into the wire and dropped face first. Tried doing my best to get the wire off him, but it was just I couldn't touch him, so I've just tried to grab like a piece of timber or a table or something just to try and hit the wire off him, but it was too late. It's hard, especially watching his wife and kids yelling at the top of their voice trying to help save him, but there's nothing I could do.
Firefighters say a power pole was struck by lightning as a storm swept through Sydney last night. Power lines were snapped, bringing live wires down onto the pavement and across driveways. The storm caused damage all across Sydney. The worst hit areas were Wyong, Liverpool, Bankstown and Hornsby. The State Emergency Service said they had almost 400 calls for help, most of those from leaking roofs and trees coming down. So the storm was felt right across the city, but no harder than here in Punchbowl.
The UN Children's Agency UNICEF says the Central African Republic, which is already one of the most dangerous countries on earth, is also the hardest place to be a child. 1 in 24 newborns don't survive beyond their first 28 days, and just 3 in 5 complete their primary education.
In the heart of Africa, a ribbon of water winds its way from north to south. 400 kilometres from the nearest proper road, Kagabandoro is a difficult place to reach. But no matter how far the journey, how long it takes you to arrive, nothing can prepare you for this. No incubators, babies wrapped in kitchen foil to survive.
We have nothing. My daughter, that's all I've got. We were attacked by rebels. I was pregnant. What do I do now? I hope things are better for her.
6 years of fighting and healthcare in Kagabandoro is almost non-existent. 1 hospital, 1 doctor, nearly 200,000 patients. Medics afraid to work here because of the threat of attack.
When there's security, you can have access to population. You'll see that sometimes you try to recruit people, but they refuse to come in this area. So this is a very big problem. Security is the umbrella, and then everything will follow.
In a town where ammunition is on sale at the local market, there's no security. Makeshift camps beside a United Nations compound are the only place where people feel safe. Just outside the safe zone, we found this abandoned village, ransacked by rebels on a killing spree. At least 26 people were murdered. Those who survived won't return.
Kagabandoro is a city divided by this bridge across the river. Behind me is the Muslim area, in front is the Christian area, and as you can see, they're separated by huge curls of barbed wire and a heavily manned UN checkpoint. And in many ways, this bridge is a symbol of the division that's affecting the whole country.
With most men fighting, these Muslim women fled to neighbouring Chad. They thought it would be safe to return, but there's little here for them now.
When we came back, we were treated like strangers. We, the women, have suffered most. Men come for our daughters. They take them away. Many of us have been raped. Everything they could do to a woman, they did.
Schools in Kagabandoro aren't just here to educate, they're also to keep children in classes and off the battlefield. 15-year-old Justin watched 7 members of his family being murdered. He wanted revenge and was welcomed into a rival armed group.
Me and my friends would cut up the bodies and take whatever they had on them, their belongings and everything. I really didn't like being in the group, and I was very glad when I was released.
Now he's being looked after and is training to be a carpenter. Most of the Central African Republic is under rebel control. The government is in no position to take over. Jeanette Nganziro told me she wanted her daughter to grow up and make a difference. 10 days after we filmed her, the baby girl died. In a country where young lives stand little chance, what future can possibly lie ahead?
A Japanese restaurant owner has paid a record of over 4 million New Zealand dollars for a single Pacific bluefin tuna fish. The auction took place at Tokyo's famous Toyosu fish market, and the bid more than doubles the previous record. However, the popularity of bluefin tuna and sushi has led to overfishing, and it's now an endangered species.
Many traders were expecting a new record to be set at this year's opening tuna auction, and they were not disappointed. The price paid by Kiyoshi Kimura for his 278-kilo prize was far higher than his own previous record. Mr. Kimura is known as Japan's tuna king, and the price he pays at the annual New Year auctions bears only a vague relationship to the actual price of tuna. On a normal day, a similar-sized fish would sell for around £45,000. Today's record is in part about status, and it creates a lot of publicity for Mr. Kimura and his sushi empire. But it is also a reflection of the scarcity of large Pacific bluefin tuna. They are officially listed as an endangered species. Last year, catches off the coast of Japan were significantly down, and since the middle of last year, prices in Tokyo have climbed by more than 40%.
Not many of us get bitten by the travel bug, but very few get the urge to visit the Hermit Kingdom, the totalitarian state of North Korea. The government keeps a vice-like grip on information, so a film shot by an Adelaide tourist who recently returned from North Korea has aroused the curiosity of a leading expert.
London, Paris, Rome and Pyongyang. Visiting the secretive North Korean capital doesn't make many people's bucket list, but it did draw retired schoolteacher Dennis Henschke.
Curiosity. I enjoy visiting places that are a bit off the beaten track.
After months of organisation, Mr. Henschke packed his bags and camera, setting off with a licensed tour group.
10,000 people.
6 hours on a rickety train from northern China into Pyongyang. He was told his particular camera was banned, luggage would be inspected, plus reams of paperwork needed to be filled out. But security overlooked it all, interested in just one bit of contraband.
They were really only interested in whether we had Bibles with us. They didn't check our cameras.
That's because in North Korea, the Holy Trinity is the Kim family. Grandfather, father and now son, Kim Jong-un. The Kims have ruled unchallenged since 1948. For North Korea expert Dr. Ewan Graham, the pictures shot by Dennis Henschke are fascinating.
It's been 10 years since I was in North Korea, so the shots of Pyongyang seem, on the surface, transformed.
New facades on buildings, more colour. Dr. Graham says Pyongyang now has the appearance of any other Asian capital, except in one essential way.
It's a showpiece capital, a Potemkin capital, you might say. That's where the elite live, so ordinary North Koreans can't choose to live in Pyongyang unless they're born there.
The countryside, though, is very different, with little evidence of mechanisation. On the tourist itinerary are the staples of totalitarian regimes, virtuoso child performers, huge monuments, organised leisure and entertainment. Travel, so the old line goes, opens the mind. North Korea is more interested in open wallets. It needs the hard currency tourists bring, though the trappings of foreign money, like electric violins, are only available to a few.
North Korea has defied all expectations and predictions of its collapse, but I think the tricky thing is inequality.
Despite the constant security, Dennis Henschke says he would go again, if his kids let him.
I think my daughter in particular feels that one day I'll come to my end, leaning over the edge of a cliff and trying to take the photograph of all time.
You only live once.
Researchers in Australia believe they have made a game-changing discovery that could save the lives of melanoma patients. They say they have found a way to stop the aggressive cancer from spreading using a drug already widely available.
It's one of the nation's most deadly cancers. More than 13,000 are diagnosed each year. But Australian scientists have found a way to stop melanoma in its tracks.
You sort of cut these escape routes for the melanoma. So that's really the novelty of our work.
Scientists at the University of Queensland's Diamantina Institute found the stem cells that allow the aggressive cancer to grow.
We now know that the cancer basically talks with the blood vessel and attracts the stem cells out of the blood vessel into the cancer environment.
And they believe the spread of melanoma can be stopped using a prescription pill that's already available.
It's a beta blocker and it's used on numerous cardiovascular implications, but also in other conditions as well.
The medication essentially cuts off the blood supply to the cancer, starving it so it can't grow or spread.
We're able to show that this drug specifically targets those blood vessel stem cells and basically blocks their path into the cancer, preventing the cancer from having blood vessels forming inside it.
Clinical trials will start this year on a small number of patients. Researchers hope the treatment will be widely available to suitable melanoma patients within 5 years.
You're at Sunday's News. Up next, we take a look at some sporting updates in Trukai Sports. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. To cricket abroad, the Black Caps have moved to Nelson for the ODI series against Sri Lanka. But the team admits some work in the field almost cost them victory in New Zealand last night.
When Sri Lanka lost 5 wickets for 16 runs to tumble to 128 for 7, the match was as good as over. But all-rounder Tisara Pereira, who had a previous top score of 20 in 10 bats against New Zealand, gave them a huge scare with a career-best 140.
I'm really proud of myself because it's my first century. Because last 8 years I'm batting around number 8 or number 9, and if I batting number 7, I can get more than this.
The ODI veteran was certainly helped by some buffet bowling and a series of shelled chances by the most unlikely suspects.
Gutzel made yardage, but not enough again.
Some of our best fielders were dropping them as well. It was a bit windy, but at the end of the day, there's no excuses for that.
Pereira almost got back all the runs his bowling had leaked in 2 games at the Bay Oval, but after back treatment he finally holed out to a trademark Trent Bolt snaffle, 21 runs shy of the 320 run target. And rain saved the Australian cricketers for more than 3 hours in Sydney today, only for India to strike immediately with the new ball. And after the last specialist batsman, Peter Hanscom, went for 37, the writing looked on the wall on the 4th day of the 4th test. The 2 opening bowlers produced a stubborn 42-run stand before spinner Yaldeep Yadav claimed his 5th wicket. Australia all out for 300. Bad light has since stopped play.
To tennis, the ASB Classic has suffered a second significant setback. One of the defending champion is withdrawing from the men's event.
Thomas Burditch did the same. Bautista Agut has pulled out of the event, citing the quick turnaround after beating Burditch in the final of the ATP Tour event in Doha. Auckland top seed John Isner understanding of the pair's decisions.
I think it's probably a smart decision because they have to focus on the Australian Open, but for the tournament itself, it's a bit unfortunate that those 2 had to play each other in the final.
Isner today a courtside guest of the Breakers, well versed in some basketball skills himself, having grown up playing the game in the States.
It's really one of my...
And Kiwi tennis player Paige Hurrigan and her American partner Taylor Townsend came out of the blocks firing in the ASB Classic doubles final, taking just 18 minutes to wrap up the first set against Eugenie Bouchard and Sophia Kennan.
Service game of Bouchard.
But the pendulum swung the other way in the second set, Bouchard and Kennan forcing the game into a deciding super tiebreak. 1661 10-7 to the Canadian-American combo.
True Guy Sports will continue with more after these messages. Stay with us.
True Guy Sports.
Welcome back to True Guy Sports. It's the Sean Long show again for the Breakers. The American import has starred with some dazzling shooting and highlight defensive plays, leading the hosts to a crucial win over arch rivals Perth.
2 days after lighting up the ANBL, Sean Long picked up where he left off for the Breakers.
Well, the perimeter shooter for the Breakers at the moment is Sean Long. He just canned a three.
But while he was firing again for the hosts, their arch-rival Wildcats could barely miss early from long range.
Well, Tarico White with a hand in his face, no problems.
The Breakers' slow start angering their coach.
Our attention to detail is shit right now. All right, we got to wake up.
Braswell's strong words seemingly having an effect. The Breakers immediately on the improve. That man Long in the thick of it again.
Sean Long ripping it out of Greg High's hands. The strength of the man.
The hosts closing the gap to 4 by half-time. Soon after the resumption, the Breakers had the lead, with Long and his fellow point-scoring contributor Ty Wesley making the moves.
Wesley! Oh, on the reverse, that's nice. Around Nick Kay.
With the teams trading baskets, the Breakers needed something at the defensive end. And what Long can do shooting, he can do just as well stopping shots.
Oh, gee whiz! Oh, my goodness! Oh, my goodness, Sean Long!
Tom Abercrombie nailing one on the buzzer of the third quarter. The Breakers all of a sudden with a cushion.
Quarter 3, Abercrombie!
And while Perth continued to fight in the final quarter, the Breakers remained in front the rest of the way, with Long putting the finishing touches on a crucial 97-84 win, the American imports scoring 33 points.
I've been really focusing on not fouling. I think it's making the game a lot funner for me, and I'm able to help the team more, and I'm happy about it.
The Breakers closing in on that 4th spot, the playoffs becoming a realistic prospect.
To football, the Premier League teams have eased past their lower-ranked components in the FA Cup third round, but one top-tier side was shocked by a team in 45 places below them.
In this famous old competition, these two sides have history. Manchester United and Reading first met in the FA Cup more than a century ago. Times may have changed, but this is a United side beginning to remind everyone of what they once were. They went ahead, though, in a very modern way. The ball went in, but a video replay here gave them a penalty instead. Juan Mata keeping his card. Although Reading had their chances, the lead was doubled before the break, Romelu Lukaku squeezing in a second. That was enough to take United's winning run under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to 5. The good old days not back at Old Trafford just yet, but that glorious history no longer feeling quite so long ago. For Chelsea, success feels rather more fresh in the memory. Last year's FA Cup winners swept aside Nottingham Forest thanks to 2 goals from Alvaro Morata. Few scares there, but elsewhere there was a shock. Gillingham struggling in League One, knocking out Cardiff City from the Premier League. Elliott List with a moment few there will forget anytime soon.
The National Road Cycling Championship has certainly been an event for the generation to come, with another youth rider upstaging the heavyweights in Apia. 20-year-old James Fouché, the new kid on the block, winning the combined under-23 and national elite titles.
You can hear the crowd screaming.
James Fouché didn't just win the National Road Cycling Champs, he crushed it.
There he is, it's James Fouché!
The 20-year-old not only taking line honours for the under-23 title, but also downing the country's elite riders by a whopping 3 minutes and 14 seconds to take out the whole championship race.
I've dreamed of this moment my whole life, and to pull it off the way I did, it was super special to me. I'm excited for what's ahead.
Fouché won the under-23 time trial on Friday and started today's race right out in front, riding amongst the heavyweights of Kiwi cycling, George Bennett, Patrick Bevan and Tom Scully.
Pretty serious there.
Bevan and Bennett no real threat, trailing the front group by 3 minutes. Scully and Fouché in the leading pack, full of under-23 riders. With 3 laps to go, Fouché made his move.
And what a power play by James Fouché to ride away from all the rest of these riders.
Scully rode the Tour de France last year, now in a test to see if he could chase down the young gun. But Fouché was too quick, pulling off the quickest 2 laps of the 166-kilometre course.
I looked behind me and had a gap and just put my head down and kept going, so I'm definitely stoked with that.
He next joins up with his European team Wigan for 2019, now with a new target on his back and his biggest prize to date.
And that ends Chukai Sports. Stay tuned for weather details coming up next.
Chukai Sports. Chukai Sports.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
A look at the weather forecast in the southern region. Rain showers in Pom and Daru, as well as Popondetta. Rain and thunderstorm in Alotau, and showers and drizzles in Kirima. In the Momasa region, rain showers in Lae and Vanimo, showers and drizzles in Wewak, rain and thunderstorm in Madang, and showers in Wau. In the New Guinea Islands region, a shower or two in Loringa, rain showers in Kavieng, rain and thunderstorm in Kokopolabao, Kimbe and Buka. And in the Highlands region, rain drizzles in Mount Hagen, rain and fog in Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wabeg. Forecast for small ships, there is renewal strong wind warning for all coastal waters. Strong northwest surge of 25 to 34 knots, with stronger gusts reaching 48 knots are expected to continue for the next 24 hours, causing rough seas and high sea waves. All small crafts and boats are advised to take necessary precautions before and after going out to sea. Gale warning for all inland areas and coastal water of southern PNG Indonesia border through Western Province to Gulf Province to Central Province and Milne Bay Province, including Vitia Strait to Long Island and West New Britain Province. Very strong northwest surge of 34 to 48 knots with stronger gusts reaching 64 knots are expected to continue for the next 24 hours, causing very rough seas and high sea waves.
The weather details were proudly brought to you by Dulux, celebrating 50 years in PNG and the only paint made in PNG.
And that's been the news, sport and weather for Sunday, the 6th of January 2019. From the entire news team, pleasant viewing. Good night.